you're all doing well at home. So Stuart and I are busy doing videos, so this is the first one. I thought we would carry on, if we can, from what we're doing in class, which is this lovely boat picture from Cornwall. I've got Barney and Maisie here to help. He wanted to be in the video, didn't you, Barney? For the first one, I thought what I'd do, which is what I was going to do in class, which was to go over, bye Barney, which was to go over actually drawing some boats. Boats are really tricky, as I said, because especially if you see on the inside, we tend to flip it up. So we will do that first. I'm going to use some different mediums, so I'll do some watercolour and I will do some oils because I'm conscious of what you all will have at home to hopefully have a go at what we're doing still at home. We were messing around yesterday, this isn't finished, but doing an old cottage in watercolour. This is just the first stage of the drawing, but the camera went wrong. So we will start drawing in a minute and get boat shapes in. Right, hello everyone. We're now back in the overhead camera viewpoint. I've just got a little scrap of watercolour. So this is Saunders watercolour, Saunders Waterford watercolour paper. I've done a printout. I've just done a section actually on the left hand side of the one that we've been doing in class, and I thought we'd just actually, to start with, not doing a full painting, but looking at some of these individual boats and how to draw them. So what I've done, and I'm not sure you can see on the picture, but you can do this at home if you print it off, is I have done a box around the boats. I've done it in white, so hopefully you can see the different shapes of the boat. I don't generally do this if I'm painting from life, but actually I think for people that are new to drawing boats, this is quite a good tip because it really makes you think about the actual shape. So I'm using a 4B pencil in the hope, I'm going to press really hard. I don't suggest that you press this hard at home. I'm just doing it so that hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So in effect, you would do it lighter because you're going to rub out these lines. These are just your working lines. But they can help you to actually get the shape. So I've not measured it. I've roughly decided that's the shape of my rectangle. And then I can start picking out points. So for example, the back of the boat, if that's about halfway, the back of the boat's going to be here. This corner here of the boat, let me move this down a little bit so you can see, is over here, and we can join them up. So this is this thing, old age thing that I always go on about starting and finishing points. So the back of the boat actually goes in line here. Now we need to work out where this bit of the boat is. So this is to the left and down a bit here. So this is going to join up here. Then we're going to have the front of the boat. I'm sure there is a technical term for that. No, the stern's the back. I can't remember what the front is. You're going to have an extra, the edge of the boat there. That's going to come in, and then you're going to come down to there. Now, over here, we're a little trickier. We could put this point in first here. So this is the front of the boat. Sometimes there's a little of a curve, I've noticed, like a point and a curve that comes around, because of course the bottom of the boat is curved. Now let's look at this line before you put it in. So it comes down to this point here. So let's look at that point in relation. So that's quite similar over here. And then it dips down and then it goes up. So you're breaking this line down and then it goes straight. So we just fiddle with that line till we feel like we've got the right shape. So I'm not interested in any of the buoys or anything. There's a bit there that I'm going to put in because you can't see the whole of this dark line back there. So that's the inside of the boat. This is the outside of the boat. There's kind of a blue thing there. Back of boat there, we've got something inside, so we can see a little bit there. We've got an orange bit there. So I literally, as you can tell, I don't know the technical terms of boats. I just like drawing and painting them. But we are just breaking things down into shape. So I don't need to know what the orange thing is. I just need to know its shape and where the relationship it is to everything else. Checking all these, then we're going to have a rope. It's going to come front. Then you can start looking at where, so at that point there, it actually comes over. We've got buoys. So my rectangle doesn't include buoys and stuff like that. It's actually just the main bit of the boat. So I'm hoping you can see that. I'm going to just put in a little bit of pen work. But it's quick and easier and more accurate, and something that I think is definitely worth practicing at home, breaking these kind of shapes down so that what happens is you automatically start doing it, and then you don't need to be doing boxes around things. It's just, I've found quite a good tool. So just putting in some of these bits. This comes down. Now, this is a bit trickier here because the inside, there's like two levels. So the inside of that bit goes round to the outside of that bit. And then this is your darker blue bit on the outside. Then you come around like that. And I think there's more buoys. I can't see because of my... Then we're going to put in, you don't have to do this with pen, but just want to see if I haven't pressed on it too hard, I'll be able to rub the pencil mark out. We're going to have this lovely reflection, which anybody that knows me knows I love water and its reflections. So let's rub that pencil mark out. So this black pen, for anybody that doesn't know it, is a waterproof pen. So that means this one is a Faber-Castell pet one. There's lots of them. You just want to make sure that they're waterproof, so that when we come to put on watercolour, it doesn't move. So there's roughly a little boat. Then you can relate your next rectangle to that one. So say for example here, roughly about here, we then have our second boat, a nice white colour one, and he's going to come. Now I'm just going to put in, because it's quite a strong vertical, and we're roughly guesstimating our distance from here to here, but of course he's further away, so he's smaller. So again, using the box, you can then see, so he's got an orange back here. Stern of the boat, I think, is the correct. There's quite a curve on there, isn't there? So we'll have another one there. And this one's slightly down from that one. It's a nice dark colour one. So I'm looking at it in relation to the other boat as well. This boat has a 3. He's not as wide because again he's further away. I think the front of him is slightly not in the middle, to the left. So I'm looking at these negative spaces so that I can then fit the back of that boat in. Put all these buoys. Another white rope there. We're going to have white fender here. The back, there's like a post there which I think is the back, and then that comes across there. More fenders. Comes down there. We're going to have reflections. There's a reflection on the side, can you see that? And on there. It's obviously a very shiny dark boat. Okay, let's get them in them. Now with these, with the pen and wash, of course these are lighter, so you don't have to use the pen if you don't want to. You could just go in straight with your watercolour. I'm just doing it because I thought I like pen and wash, but also just make it a bit easier for you to see at home. Boy there, down there. It's a nice wooden. So always as well, you're looking at this. It looks quite like the water's quite calm here. If you've got boats that are moving, you'll often notice the front. So always be conscious. A bit like a portrait, you're looking at what way the face is leaning. Same with the boat, you're looking to see if it's leaning one way or another. These fenders. I hope fenders is the right word. I think that's the right word. My students now make up words anyway on a regular basis. Another one in there. Then we got, oh, look at that really sexy reflection of that white. Let's kind of hint at that. This is all going to be dark. So my pen's just kind of helping me for when I do my painting. We've got a nice reflection over here. And we'll have blue a bit. So you're kind of just trying to hint what is going on in the water. I think we'll just stick with that 3 because there's a nice reflection. Something there. Rope. I've lost that orange bit there. So you can be quite scruffy. Often gives a bit of a movement. These little lovely rowing boats are moving around on the water. You could also do yourself a little seagull if you want. Okay, so that's the end of the drawing. Let's rub that out. So again, making sure it is a permanent ink pen. Like that. So that's the end. Let's see if there's all focus of the sketch of the boats. And then next we will move on to painting them with a bit of watercolour. Okay? Right, so now we've got our nice drawing. We put our pen on it. We're going to have some fun with some paint. I've got another picture here which doesn't have the squares on it that we did from the drawing earlier. So I have brushes. I've got some new ones, so I'm excited to use them. And we have watercolour. Mine set here has a bit of gouache in as well, just because I like using both. And 2 lots of water, one to clean, one when we need water to soften edges. So let's get going. So watercolour is different from an oil in that we go generally light to dark. So we're going to start off, I'm going to actually use a little bit of white gouache for this first bit to get this really light, that's not showing up, bit more paint needed. It's not going to stand out brilliantly well yet because we need all the darker bits next to it, but it's just a little bit of yellow and white mixed together to show that the sun is shining on it. So often I say in class that we wouldn't just put white on because that's a cold colour and it's going to look like snow. Got some tissue as well to wipe my brush on. So let's get going now. Where shall we start? Let's do this boat here. Now, one of the things with watercolour is that yes, you go from light to dark. However, you want to try and get your tone right first time if you can. There's nothing worse than seeing a watercolour where someone has gone over and over the top of it because it loses that kind of translucency that watercolour has. I'm just using a bit of cobalt blue. I'm running out of cerulean and I'm going to use the tiniest bit of black. And I'm just going to test it, and you can see it over here. I'm trying to get that colour there, maybe a bit more cobalt blue. So I haven't got a lot of water in this. It's flowing, but I want a concentrated colour. So the more water you put in it, the more it's going to be lighter. I'm going to go around that right there. But bear in mind, watercolour goes 50% lighter. So this side, I'm actually going to add a little bit of black in here as well. It's quite nice in watercolour not to have it all the same colour. So you have some varying tones. So I might actually just put a little bit of this dark under here as well. Fill that in. We've got a reflection of the boy there. So I'm going to clean my brush. It's not going to be the same brightness as the boy, the actual boy, because of course it's reflecting on the side of the boat. So it's hard to think and mix. So that's just a bit of, I think, cadmium red and black. And I'm hoping I haven't made it too watery. So I've just tested a bit. It's a little bit too watery. So the thicker your paint is, the less far it's going to travel. Okay? If it does travel too far, clean your brush, take the excess off and you can pull it in. But I'm not actually going to fiddle because I quite like that. You could, it is a tiny bit light in the middle, so you could lift a bit off if you wanted. And just put a little bit of neat red on there. So the more water that you add in, the more it's going to disperse everywhere. So that we just need to make a little bit more of the front of this boat here, I think. Smooth it out a bit. Here, we've actually got a buoy that's the same colour, so whilst I've got that, I'm just going to put that in there. There's a little dark bit, so actually whilst I've got something on my brush, I might as well put that in. I've lost the front of the boat, but I'm going to show you a special trick. So you could see about lifting out. It probably won't want to do it whilst. So I'm literally cleaning my brush, dabbing at that and wiping it. So I've kind of taken a bit out there, but I have some magic white pens that we can use at the end if we need to. Going back to the cobalt blue, wake that up. One tip I didn't say actually is a spray bottle. If you've not used your watercolours, just spray them just to wake them up. These are half pans that I bought, but they're not half pans with paint. They're half pans that I've then filled from the tube. Because I get through quite a bit of paint, I'm just going to add that little blue there. So I'm not going to do this light bit, the edge around here yet, because that's wet and it's all just going to pour in. So we're going to go and play somewhere else for a bit. Let's come and do this dark boat up there. So we're going to use ultramarine blue. Feel wake up and play. And we're going to add a tiny bit of black. Ooh, tiny bit. That's loads. Let's add a bit more. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of burnt umber. You don't really want to use black on its own ever because it's quite a flat colour. So let's put it on and make a judgment, bearing in mind it's going to dry lighter. But actually, if you put a bit on and it looks too dark, instead of filling your brush, just keep moving that bit of paint around. You can move it and it will lighten it like that. I'm going to leave that white reflection down here. Going to be careful now. I've got my nice new flat brush. It's a 3/8 Pro Art brush. Come over here. Here I might add just half of that black over on this side, just a bit of more brown, because it seems it's warmer on this side. I think the light, if you look at the boat's lights on this side, so that will just warm that colour up, so make it a bit less boring. I didn't put a rope in that boat, that's okay. I will show you how we can make that better. Now I might go into the really dark colour that we used on that side and just see if I can drop. So instead of painting, I'm filling my brush and I am dabbing it onto the page, and you're basically releasing paint. I'm going to put a bit more on the other side as well. So this is the thicker mix again. So we're releasing paint, we're not painting with it. That will just make sure that as that dries, this side will go a little bit darker, hopefully. Okay, so I'm going to leave that now to dry, play with that. Let's come to the back of this boat. So that's like a very pale orangey pink colour, isn't it? So this is where I have actually got some orange. So if you haven't got orange, red and yellow. Now let's have a look at that colour. I'm going to add a tiny bit of alizarin crimson just to pinkify it a bit. A little bit too much. Go back, add a bit more. I think that's cadmium orange there. And I'm just going to add a bit of water. So you could, if you like using gouache, add a bit of gouache to lighten it up. I think that would be okay. And we're just going to put that on the back. A little bit's gone at the front. I'm going to clean my brush, take the excess off so I've got no paint on there. And I'm just going to lift that off whilst that's still wet. Clean my brush, take the excess off, lift that bit of paint off. Just to clean that up a little bit. As this is drying here, I'm just going to soften that a little bit. There's a bit of a hard edge there. I'm lifting paint out. You're in control of the watercolour. So we've done that bit. Now I'm going to add some yellow to that orange we just made. This is a lot yellowier, this bit back here. And then I'm going to add a bit of burnt sienna to get this kind of wooden look. I'm trying not to touch the black. I'm going to leave that actually. I think there's a tiny bit under here that just might. I might have upset that. You kind of want to wait, but I'm trying to do it quickly for you. I'm just going to add some yellow in with that orange that we had, and I'm going to put a bit on. So you're testing it and you're making a judgment. So this is, maybe needs a tiny bit more cadmium red. I'm going to, can you see we've got this pool? You don't really want a pool, so I'm just using my brush as a vacuum cleaner just to lift that off. There's while I've got that on my brush, there's a little boy back there. Put that in. And there is also, I look carefully, a little slither there, so I will just put that in there, lift that off, just come down a bit, don't move there. Okay, whilst we've got this orange, I think that's dry now, so we can put that orange in there. Anywhere else it looks like there's a little bit of something, I'm not sure what it is there, so we'll add that in. Now the shadow here is cerulean, maybe with a tiny bit of raw sienna or yellow ochre on that edge bit. So let me try a bit first. So let's put that on. Actually, maybe I'm going to put a bit of cerulean with a bit of burnt umber instead, actually. So it's kind of greyed it off. It's not so bright, sunshiny. So I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to take the excess off. You're going to hear me say this all the time. And I'm going to soften. So I haven't got loads of water on my brush, but I'm softening that edge a bit in that corner. So I'm literally lifting the paint off with my brush, not putting it on. So I'm going to leave that bit. So if you use the edge of your little finger, it'll tell you what's wet still. We have to be careful. So let's try a bit of this in here. Maybe leave a little bit of a white gap on that top bit. You don't always want to fill in everything. And it's a little bit lighter. I'm going to add a tiny bit of cerulean and some water to that. Just vary the colour between the dark side. I think I may not have done that dark enough on that side. Lift that off. Move that around. I haven't got that line in there, but I'm going to use my nice flat brush to get that in. Remember, we don't judge till it's finished. I'm just going to put a little bit more paint whilst it's still wet. So this is cobalt again, just on this side. I'm just releasing with my brush. On there. What else have we got? We've got a little bit of blue actually, if it will let me. Just dab on that boy there. Now, burnt umber with a tiny dot of black, or you could use blue, just on that bit of wood. So again, the shadow's on that side, so you want to keep that nice. I might just see if I can put a little bit more brown on there. It's too wet. Lift it off with my brush. Okay, that's that bit done. I'm going to use a bit of that dark colour that we used for this boat back here. And I'm just going to put, there's a line, so this is when a flat brush is really nice. Get that bit in there. So I'm just working my way around the picture, trying to avoid anything that I think is really wet. This is darker, so I'm just putting another bit on there. There actually, whilst I've got that on my brush, there is, if it's not too wet, a bit in there. There's a bit down there, but you might come back on with the brush in a minute to do that. With a pen, sorry. And I'm going to try, if it will let me, do a bit black. It's bleeding a little bit into there, so I should be more patient, but I'm going to clean my brush, take the excess, and then just take that bit off and sell it. It's not allowed to come up here. Like there. Maybe a bit of the bluey grey as well. Just a little bit under there. And if it will let me, a bit under there. Oh, bit of that brown we had earlier, I didn't put in this little post back there. There, maybe a little bit there. It's all light under there, so we're going to leave that. Where else have we got we can play? A little bit of like a darker blue in there. And a bit of cobalt blue, I think, or maybe even some cerulean actually, the turquoisey one. Just in here. So this is like ropes and stuff. I might actually, whilst that looks like it's still wet, just put a bit of cerulean in there. And a bit in there. Now, I'm getting a bit worried that everything is a little bit too wet. That little shadow in there. Let's do this boy. So this boy is quite red. We've got that colour left over, so I'm all for one for recycling. Put that in there. Maybe a bit more orange. Just there's like the light seems to be hitting the middle of that, so I'll kind of show that there. And I might just over exaggerate that bit there. So we need a lighter blue, so I'm going to add some water to that to see if I can, without everything bleeding, can just kind of hint a little bit that these bits around the outside are there. And I might make that, it looks like it might be a life buoy or a life jacket. It's a little bit brighter, a bit more exciting. I've lost this bit here, but don't panic. You can do two things. One, use your brush, like I said earlier. You could also get a little bit of tissue just to show you something else. And I'm going to dab. You don't want to do too much of that because it can do it quite harshly. But actually, I think on there, that's quite good. Now, I think what I'm going to do is actually, before I do the do a bit on Mr. Seagull. Before I do any more on the back of the water, I'm actually just going to let that dry for a few minutes and then I'll show you how to do the back. Okay? Thank you. Right, so now that's dried a bit, let's get some water in the background and some of these reflections. So we're going to start off with a blue, and I'm going to do a vignette on this one. I really need to fill up my cerulean. So a bit of cerulean and a bit of cobalt, I think. so it's not too tropical. So vignette means when it fades at the edge. Because I'm only doing part of this picture, I'm going to ignore things like the shadow in the background, the reflection of that boat there, because we're pretending it doesn't exist. So I'm going to keep cleaning my brush. I need some more tissue, and everything's fallen over. And I'm going to soften it. So clean my brush, and I'm softening. So I'm wanting to give. You need to do this whilst it's still wet. You want to just soften this. Can't do it so easily when it's dry. So clean the brush, take the excess off. And we really want our darker colours down at the front, so that this is just kind of setting the scene, just going a little bit more carefully around the back. That's why these flats are quite good actually, because you can just use the corner, or you can use them flat. So I'm kind of missing a few bits of white as well. Not too much. So let's have a think down here. I need to soften this edge. Clean the brush. Take the excess off. Let's just soften that. Sorry if you can hear any growling noises. The dogs have decided to play under the table. I'm obviously bored with hearing about how to paint in watercolour. So, calm down. Can you see I'm keeping it nice and straight, and I'm using the brush. I'm going to soften this edge, clean the brush, take the excess off. And you can be quite kind of rough in this. You're just moving it around to give it a nice soft feel. Depends how far you want to come. You might come out, you can come out a little bit further. Yeah, bunny. Sorry about that. I think they're bored. So this is, we're going to put some greens and stuff in here. Don't worry about if you go over the rope. You could use masking fluid to retain those whites if you want. We're going to do, when we do our finishing details, I'll show you a little trick I use. So I'm all the time actually looking at this edge, making sure that I haven't got it too harsh an angle. Just clean the brush, take the excess off. Just going to soften up here a little bit. So you could vary your blue if you want to. Put a little bit of turquoisey, more kind of cerulean. Just see, I'm dropping. It's a big thing in watercolour that people think they need to be painting. Like I always say, painting and decorating, but actually often you're more releasing, especially when it's wet, you're kind of releasing the paint. Here we've got a shadow. There's a dark shadow which is from the rocks, but I put too much on there. That's alright. Clean the brush, take the excess off. It's good to show you what to do if it goes wrong. Some of that comes in here. I'm kind of going oval shape really, with kind of a muted pale look. Maybe soften some of those bits. I think that'll do. As so I've left some white bits down there as well. There aren't any on the picture, but I just think it looks quite nice. Just going to add a little bit more paint whilst that's wet. Edge of that brush. Use my finger comes in useful if it's gone on the boat. So they're really starting to pop out a bit more now. So now we need to mix a green. Now I've got a Hooker's green, but Hooker's green is going to be too bright. Do not use Hooker's green on its own in it. So we're going to put a bit of ultramarine, and if you're in doubt, try it on the side. So I'm going to want to come up to my edge. I don't really want to go over the edge if I can help it, because it's going to give me a darker line because you'll then have 2 layers of paint. I'm going to take a little bit off so I can move around. I'm actually just going to move. I bought a smaller flat brush. And just fill my brush with more paint. It's quite interesting actually. I've just swapped brushes. This one holds nowhere near as much paint as that one. It is going to bleed out. Sometimes that's quite nice. Or you might just want to let it dry, but I'm trying to do it quicker. So if you want a hard edge, you'd let that underneath bit dry first. Now I'm gonna make a bit of a thicker paint. So remember what I say about thicker paint. So this is less water, more paint. And that, I'm going to add a tiny bit of burnt umber just to dull that down. So that was, I think that was Hooker's green and ultramarine blue with a bit of, I think that's burnt umber dark over there. And just, if I can, I'm going to put in a few darker bits, especially near the edge. If you think about it tonally, the colour I put on first is not dark enough. Might even put a little bit black in that, because I wish I put blue actually. Let's put blue, because I'm looking at this reflection back here. So the thicker my paint is, the less it's going to travel. So if I was painting this not for a video for you, I'd probably have let that dry. Clean the brush. We need to go right under here, because there's no light getting in here. Now, if you get this tree bit forming, clean your brush, take the excess off, you're in control. You can just lift it to move that paint around till you get it to where you want it to go. I've just realised that there's a bit where this line is. We're going to put something else in there. We're going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue so we get a bluier kind of look up there. And I'm doing too much fiddling really. I'm going to stop, because this is where we mess it up, when it's too fiddly. Now, I forgot to put in the reflection of the boy. So I'm going to just lift that out. So clean my brush. It's still really wet. So we're going to put a bit of orangey, maybe Kevin orange in a bit, if it'll let me. I prefer it to be in a line, but because I'm trying to do it quickly, that will just reflect. And whilst I've gone, this has gone really light. Can you see how light this has gone? So we're just going to add, whilst we've got it, a bit in those as well. And you could also, if you wanted, so it kind of ties in. You want harmony in the painting, so using colours that you've used elsewhere is a good technique really. So let's get this one up. Fill your brush. One of the things I think with watercolour is, as well as people try to get a little bit of paint, we should have more luck with this one in terms of, this is drier up here. Now we need to leave these nice bits of white if we can. You could add a bit of cerulean in if you want it to go a little bit bluer, less kind of greeny. Still trying to get it dark under that base, and then a bit lighter as we get forward. So if it's a bit dark, you use your brush, lift off some of that paint. You don't have to leave that. You can move it around whilst it's still wet and leave it to dry. Right, now we have some green over here as well, which if you don't have the dark, you don't have the light. So I'm going to let that dry a minute, and I'm just going to come back and fiddle, even though you're not allowed to fiddle. Over here, I need some of that green on this side because we want that white to show up. And also I'm going to put a little bit more cobalt with, just as kind of a half tone, so that we have a little bit of a darker kind of look here. Maybe a few more kind of lines in here. Again, bit of a, there's a subtle bit between that green and the blues. I'm just adding more blue in there. Bringing some of this blue in. Maybe a few. Now it's dry, can you see they stay nice? They don't fan out. Oh, painting water is so much fun. Just a few. We're not, and I'm not religiously, I mean, I could sit here and copy every single line and everything that's going on. So what should we do now? Let's have a look. Now you've got, whilst that's drying, I'm just going to test that. I might actually, I kept a little bit, I cleaned my palette between while it was drying, but I kept a bit of that black because I noticed I hadn't gone in there, and I wanted to also just touch that bit up. Now that's dry, you can if you need to, but I really try and encourage you to get this done first time, as you could just darken it up in a few places. But we really want to try. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm just going to soften that. I don't want it too standing out. Same here. Let's just soften that in. So clean my brush, take the excess off. I'm going to put as well kind of a blue in that black, like a dirty blue, a bit of a grey down the front here. And a bit more definition at the top on this nice shadow. Clean the brush, take the excess off. So now we're kind of looking what we could do differently, what not differently, more what we can do to improve it. Any little bits that look fun. Maybe a bit darker under here, whilst, because I'm waiting for the outside bit to dry. And there's a kind of darker bit in there. Maybe a bit of a darker orange. Just on a few bits. I'm showing the shadows. Might even actually go, so this is, I'm using kind of less water and more paint. Might even do another little bit. That's too much, so I've cleaned my brush, pulling that down on there. And maybe even I would exaggerate this as a little, where that turn is. So I'm we'll put some lighter bits in the middle. I might actually ultramarine blue and a bit of that dark colour, or a bit of black, just to kind of show. I'm going to put a bit on. This is dry now. Clean my brush. I don't want it to stand out too much, but actually there's a nice kind of a bit of shadow on this side of the boat. I don't want to upset what's underneath, so I'm not pressing hard. I'm just literally kind of tickling this on the top to get a bit more definition. Clean my brush. Just kind of soften that. You don't want to start waking up because you're going to make a mess, but I just want to show a bit more on that one. So I'm squinting my eyes as usual just to see if I want to kind of make anything stand out a bit more. So we're going to put that rope back in as well, but I'm waiting for this to dry a bit. Ah, that's the bit. I knew there was something I should be doing. So this dark colour, just a tiny bit black. So is that too dark? Put that bit of paint off. I then take the rest of it off on my paintbrush. And we're going to come underneath, and this dark, maybe I've taken too much off. This dark's going to make those boys stand out a bit as well. And even maybe a few bits along the side of that white. And in that corner there, because this is a very dark boat and it's going to have a strong reflection. So maybe if I can, just a little bit dark on here. You can't really see too much the difference between this bit at the back, so if you can't see it, don't put it in. That's all a bit wet. I'm not happy with this orange thing, so I'm going to just dab on. It's kind of gone a bit dull. I want a bit more colour. But that's practically neat. Just because I always think the orange of the boys gives a nice kind of excitement. And just, this is going to be wet. But take off my brush, it's too much. Lift a bit out. A little bit dark here. So it's interesting that when you keep looking, you see more and more little fiddly bits. So this is where you can tend to get a little bit over detailed. A bit of a pink on there as well. So I think that's going to do for now. She says, just putting another bit of blue in there. So we need to put some white in. So I think I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll do a final bit, which is basically just then fiddling with some details. Okay? So it's all finally dry after doing our 2 bits of watercolour. So now we can have just a final review of it and decide if there's any bits you want to change. Now I want to introduce you to these, which are Uni Posca. They're kind of like, I think they're white chalk pens. You have to shake them to wake them. You get them in lots of different sizes. I got a set, which you got loads of them. They're quite handy, so especially if you're painting au plein air and you have lost some of your white bits, and you can just put them back in. So you could use some white gouache as well. If you look over here, sometimes you have to get it going a bit. But say here we lost that rope. There we go, coming out now. So you could just put that back in. Any boys, you might have to put a few layers in, so anywhere that you think. And it sometimes just adds quite a nice little touch here and there. You maybe want to make more of that reflection. I'm going to just leave those boys because they're white. A bit of reflection. That's got a bit of blue on actually. We might put a bit more paint on there, but they're quite good for putting in reflections here where this front of this boat is, and then actually where you've got this wiggly kind of bit there. But you can actually use your finger just to soften bits. You could also go back on with watercolour, but maybe you want some highlights. Make it up a bit. It's like one of those pens I had at school, you have to press it. I've lost that bit of light up there, so we're just going to put that in. So maybe there's a highlight on there. Kind of ropes and stuff, so we can put them back in. And it's quite good to give this kind of watery effect. So that's one way. The other way, I've got a brand new rigger here. So it's better off actually to put some fresh paint, white gouache on your palette actually, because this is going to grey it off. But if I can get this strong enough, this white gouache, so this is opaque compared to the watercolour. So this will really stand out. Again, you might have to do 2 layers. If you do it neat from the tube, you won't. It will be strong enough. But we just kind of want to show a few more these lovely reflections. Might put a little bit up there. We might put, if I can get it, just a little swipe on Stephen the Seagull. There's a little bit here. I don't know what that is. There's a lighter bit there actually. But just, I think, all the rope coming down, I think it just finishes off little bits and pieces. Especially with the water, I think you can pull a few bits out, lighten things up. You could also mix this in with the paint, so that, let me show you if I can do that. So this green that I've still got mixed up, add some white opaque to it, and might have to overdo it a bit. This is a bit small, this brush, but you could also put, if you've gone a bit dark, put a few watery bits in there. So I think I'm going to cut. That reflection's got a bit of a line in it. Now I'm just having a look. I think we're there now, I think. You're just having another look. You can go back in actually, I'll just tell you that. You could go back in with your pen. As long as it's dry, it won't really work. There's a kind of darker shadow. So you could go back in with your pen as well. Just make any bits a bit darker. Darker bit in there. You get to a stage where you start faffing a bit though. So you can also add, so you could add more pen in to show a bit more movement in the water. Any bits you want to go darker. That's got like a seaweedy bit and then it's kind of entering the water, so we'll just plant that, and I'll plant this one actually. That's setting. So I think we're there because I'm now faffing and fiddling. There's something there, I don't know what that is. So I think we'll leave it like that. Nice little sketch of boats using pen watercolour. These white chalk pens. I will try and zoom in a bit for you. There we go. Hope you've learned something and that I look forward to seeing what you've done. That's to my students. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.